Hello everyone and welcome to week 3. So this week we are focusing on chapters 5 and chapter 6, so only 2 this week, not like our normal. We've been doing 3 chapters, but this week you get a break. For the day 1 video, I'm going to focus on chapter 6 first, and we'll do chapter 5 for the day 2 video. So chapter 6 is dealing with the office environment. So when we talk about the office environment, we really need to focus more on the safety, but it's not just the safety of ourselves, but also of that of our patients and our other coworkers, physicians, front office assistants, all of those people. So those safety measures that we need to really talk about include our general safety, employee safety, emergency planning, and how we handle biological waste and bloodborne pathogens. So we're going to take a few minutes and break each one of those down and discuss them individually. So general safety, this falls under OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It's a governmental agency that is responsible for the safety of all of its employees in the United States and within U.S. companies. OSHA sets strict standards to help keep employees safe, and those include, providing training, doing outreach, education, establishing partnerships with employees, and encouraging continual improvements in the workplace. OSHA is not only concerned with bloodborne pathogens, but they're also concerned with any workplace hazards that could impact the employee safety. So some of those things that could impact the employee safety are things such as fires, floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, and explosions. So within those, when we talk about fires, there's 2 really important acronyms that you need to know. The first one is RACE, which stands for Rescue, Alarm, Contain, and Evacuate. And PASS, which stands for what we use when we're using fire extinguishers, which stands for Pull, Aim, Squeeze, and Sweep side to side. When we start talking about employee safety, we really need to understand that it is the responsibility of every staff member to make sure that they are being safe. Staff must be constantly aware of their surroundings and try to avoid any possible hazards if they can. Employees will also need to be able to implement all safeguards to keep themselves safe as well as the patients. When we talk about employee safety, that could be, us just following, the OSHA bloodborne pathogens, making sure that we're wearing the protective equipment that we need to. We're following the universal, standard, and transmission-based precautions set forth by the CDC. Maybe it's just making sure you're using proper body mechanics. Things such as making sure that you're stooping to pick things up, you bend with your back, not your legs. You lift firmly and smoothly when you have to pick things up. If you can't lift the load, don't try to. Always try to get help, or maybe just have a second set of hands there. Make sure that when you're carrying things, you're using your center of gravity to carry the load. If you can pull something rather than push it, that actually works out better. Avoid reaching and twisting, because those are typically when we injure ourselves the most. And always remember that if at any point in time something happens, some unusual event does occur, or you get hurt on the job, an incident report does need to be filled out. Emergency plans are important as well. OSHA requires that each medical office have a written exposure control plan. And this is really just to help assist with minimizing the employee's exposure to infectious materials. This plan must be reviewed annually, and the employees as well as the employer must have a say in all of the changes that need to occur within the policy and in the plan. An exposure control plan must consist of 3 different parts. It must have an exposure determination, a method of compliance, and a post-exposure follow-up. So when we talk about exposure determination, that is a list of jobs within the office that are at risk for exposure to potentially infectious materials. The method of compliance is a specific set of measures that are used to reduce the risk of exposure. And post-exposure follow-up is obviously the follow-up and evaluation that takes place after an exposure. This can include seeking medical treatment, and all post-exposure records must be kept for a minimum of 30 years, even if the employee is terminated or no longer works for the company. When you're handling biological waste or bloodborne pathogens, it's important to know that there are 4 different types, and there's 4 different categories. They can be solid, chemical, radioactive, or infectious. Solid materials are items that can come from a patient's room or a surgery site. Chemicals are things such as your germicide, cleaning supplies, and pharmaceuticals or medications. Radioactive talks about waste that contains any radioactive materials. For example, iodine 123 and iodine 131 are considered radioactive materials. And the infectious materials, or medical waste, are any materials that have potential to carry diseases, typically those that are soiled in blood or bodily fluids. When you're handling these items, regardless of the type, you must make sure that you're following the MSDS, or the Material Safety Data Sheet. The Material Safety Data Sheet offers basic information that is needed to ensure the safety and the health of the employees when they're storing or using or even disposing of materials. We do have one in our lab. It is in the back corner, and it's in a red binder. We purposely did it in a red binder so it would stand out for you guys, and also so that we know which one is which. When needed, we can send students for specific binders. The Material Safety Data Sheet should be available to all employees and easily accessible. So like I said, in our laboratory, it's kept out on a binder in the open for you guys to reach at any time. I know in my previous work that it was a binder kept in my manager's office, so it was always accessible for us. The MSDS label can also be used, and that is broken down into 4 different categories, and they're broken down by color. Red stands for flammability, or ability to catch on fire. Blue is a health hazard. What kind of hazard would it have to your health? Yellow is for reactivity, so would it react and would it catch fire, or would it cause some sort of other explosion maybe? And white represents the PPE requirements that are needed. And remember, PPE stands for personal protective equipment. Now, if you remember, we did kind of talk about bloodborne pathogens and what those requirements are in week 2. So if you would like to review that, chapter 6 is awesome at doing this. It does have a great explanation of bloodborne pathogens, but in this video I will not be discussing that because it is something we did spend a great deal of time on in week 2. Alright guys, so that is all I have for our day 1 video here. As always, I will have your printed materials that you will need for the week, especially for day 1, as that's what we're going to focus on first. You don't need to print anything, so just come to class, but make sure that you have all of the necessary things to come to class. All of your equipment, your laptops, tablets, computers, whatever it may be that you have with you, but make sure that you have all of that with you. You're in your Rasmussen scrubs, and I will see you on day 1. Stay tuned for the day 2 video later this week. Bye guys.